It's important to remember that Father Magan, Lord Genome, Rossiu, and even the Anti-Spiral are motivated by love. They love humanity and the universe and want it to survive, but they've allowed fear to contort that love into something almost unrecognizable. And when Rossiu realizes he's been repeating the mistakes of those who came before him, he feels like what he's done is unforgivable. But that's not for him to decide. No matter how far gone you think you are, or how great a penance you feel you deserve, if you're motivated by love, most of the time, all you need is to be reminded of what the weight of a single human life feels like. But before that, let's see you grit those teeth. The thing about death is that not everyone can have a grand final stand on their own terms. Sometimes you just get caught off guard in the heat of battle, and before you know it, that's it for you. Other times you make an intentional sacrifice so that others can keep on fighting after you're gone. And while it might be a split-second decision, it's one that you would make 100 times if you needed to. And when it comes to the people left behind, their responsibility is to not let the sacrifice be in vain. And to me, the most tragic but accurate picture of this is when Lete realizes that Makan is dead, and only takes a second to grieve him before getting back to work, because that's her responsibility. Khitan is a character that I struggled with for a long time. I always just thought of him as a great value Kamina, a pale imitation of the character I actually wanted to see. And that's not entirely out of nowhere. The show seems intent on going out of its way to highlight his insufficiencies at every turn, while simultaneously deifying Kamina to an extreme level. I mean, don't get it twisted, Kamina is an orders of magnitude better character than Khitan, and I will die on that hill. But the thing that finally clicked with me for Khitan was that he wasn't meant to be this amazing, larger-than-life monolith of a man that Kamina was. He was simply meant to be a guy on the ground floor doing what needs to be done because it was the only thing he was any good at. Fundamentally, he is proof of concept that you don't need to be an impossibly great man to do impossibly great things. I've spent almost half my life wondering what it would have been like if my dad had never died. It's a paralyzing kind of mental exercise that forces you to question what it is that makes you who you are. Would I be willing to sacrifice the life that I've built for myself and the person that I've become for the sake of having more time with him? I don't know which Kamina I would pick, so to speak, and it's probably for the best that I don't have a say in the matter. But here's what I do know. I can't let the what-ifs, maybes, and if-onlys distract me. I've become a person that I think he would be proud of, and I can always carry him with me. And for what it's worth, I'm also taller than him. In the myth of Sisyphus, French philosopher Albert Camus posits that we must imagine Sisyphus as happy in his toil, that we must accept the suffering and absurdity of the world, or else fall into despair. Gurren Lagann says, no, that's your limitation. The central thesis of the series, as it were, is that we are not just able but obligated to stubbornly reject both absurdity and despair. One of the most common mistakes that everyone, including myself, makes is assuming that some amount of suffering is always going to exist, because it's common sense, right? Not everybody can always have it good. But the Team Gurren way is to reject common sense to make the impossible possible. And we should never let someone else's idea of what's possible act as a ceiling on the future that we strive for. And whenever you do find a ceiling, try using a drill. Okay, this one might be exceptionally long, but there's just too many good things to talk about during this last arc of the show, so just bear with me. Stick around to the end, and you might have a good time. So, related to the fact that all of the vehicles in Communist City either have legs or levy spheres instead of wheels, every single piece of technology or building or vehicle has a face on it. Of course, an iron and a flashlight would have faces on them, because that's just what technology is in this universe. Similarly, the running joke that instead of just being able to pilot a larger gunman, you have to use your gunman to pilot a larger gunman. So just that sort of layered effect is a really funny running joke to me. And speaking of running jokes, all of the different times where there's a detailed technical explanation for what's happening and everyone is just like, I literally don't understand what you're talking about. Can you speak English? Or Japanese, I guess. And the only time that it's different is when Rossyu is like kind of able to comprehend it and Kitan's just like, what kind of monster are you, Rossyu? And as funny as it is, it also speaks to the whole ethos of the series that's basically like, don't sweat the details, don't get bogged down in needing a detailed explanation for everything. And one of my favorite moments of this is when Lord Genome is trying to tell them what the chance of success is, and Liron cuts him off and is just like, it doesn't matter, we're just gonna do it. Only for it then to be revealed that it was actually impossible. There was a 0% chance of it working, but it worked anyways because of their attitude. I love the design of the anti-spiral and the Mugan and I guess the big ships that are also technically Mugan. Just the way that they clash with the general aesthetic of the show is used symbolically to express that they don't really fit in with the universe. I love the way that the character deaths are drawn, the way that they dissolve into a flash of light, I think is really beautiful. But I also love the way that death is treated as just a natural part of the cycle of life, because it is. If everyone lived forever, there wouldn't be any space for the people who came after them. I love that Simon and Yoko, as the people closest to Kamina, are the first ones able to break out of the anti-spiral's mind virus. It just to me speaks to how powerful that relationship was for both of them and how impactful of a character Kamina still is almost a decade after his death in universe. I also love Viral's face when he breaks out of the mind virus. I could write a whole video just on that face. Infinity Big Bang Storm is one of the coolest attacks in all of anime. Please put Burn in the Everlasting Hellfire of the universe's creation on my tombstone, I beg you. Also, when Lord Genome then turned that attack into a giant drill, I just felt that deep in my soul. Anyways, that's been Tengen Toppa, and that's been Gurren Lagann. I'm someone who has a hard time being hopeful about the future. If I try to think more than a month or two in advance, I get really anxious and overwhelmed, and I just need to distract myself from everything that I'm feeling. And when I get especially in my head about things, I always find myself returning to Gurren Lagann. It's one of those shows where every single one of the dozens of times I've rewatched it, I've gotten something new about it, and it's been a cathartic and spirit-cleansing experience every single time. So in the spirit of finishing my time with this series the way I began, it's time to talk about my singular favorite moment in the whole show. In a show filled to the brim with parallels, my favorite is this sort of narrative call and response from the beginning to the end of the series. In the flash-forward prologue, Buta says, "So, all the lights in the heavens are enemies, eh? That is, the future is full of adversity and it's something to be feared." But then, at the end, with all of the joy and heartbreak, all of the success and tragedy behind him, Simon responds, "The lights in the sky are stars. The future is something that's full of hope, and it's something to be loved and looked forward to." I love this show, and I'll certainly return to it and maybe even make more videos about it someday. But for now, I'm ready to move on. I want to thank all of you that have joined me on this journey, and for the first time in a long time, I'm really excited about what I have planned next. I hope that you'll want to join me in all that is yet to come.